Joining us now is Dave Smith. He's hot off of a major debate, roiled the internet, host of the Part of the Problem podcast, and more importantly, a good friend. It's good to see you, Dave. Thanks for joining us, man.
Good to see you too, man. Thank you both for having me back on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, our pleasure.
I mean, Dave, look, we're preaching to each other, but it's still satisfying, and we need to sit here and revel a little bit in some of the fallout from your Douglas Murray debate. I mean, I think there were many parts of it, the quote-unquote expert concern trolling from Douglas. There was the general pomposity. But I mean, what really struck a nerve and what the pro-Israel folks really hung on to and how you allegedly were destroyed was you've never been to Israel, a very lived experience argument. And so Will wanted you to respond to a clip that I know you've surfaced and have seen of Douglas Murray talking about lived experience to you, but then previously shouting down the idea of lived experience as legitimate. Let's take a listen. We're going to get your reaction.
Have you been to the crossing points?
I really resent that form of argumentation.
When were you last there at all?
Sure. I really resent it.
You should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
This is not an attractive invitation.
I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something.
I have the right to talk about whatever the hell I want. And no one's going to stop me or try to intimidate me. And I think that if I said to somebody else the other way around, it would be equally reprehensible.
I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country, even in passing, unless I've at least been there.
If I said, shut up, you have no right to criticize anything that Douglas Murray says because...
Hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay, it's not an exact comparison, but seriously, is that a reasonable form of argument? No. In that case, nobody can talk about anything. We might as well pack up, go home, and isolate ourselves.
If you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, if you've never seen any of this going on.
I mean, there are some people who've written about the Holocaust who didn't experience the Holocaust and have written about it better than people who did.
But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it.
This idea that the lived experience has to triumph over everything else is not always correct.
You should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region.
So there's an irony to this, but let's skate over the irony.
Dave, I'm sorry to subject you to that again, but you gotta, I mean, what's it like, on the other side of nearly 3 hours of this and now seeing some of this past lived experience argumentation from him?
Well, I wish that guy was there at the debate. He did a better job than I did. It's funny. So once I saw this, it's because I brought up my first thing was like, oh, you never been to Nazi Germany, but you can still have an opinion about that. And then I was like, oh, he made the same point. He made it better than me. Yeah, yeah, exactly. A lot of people have written about it and explained it better than people who actually lived through it. I mean, look, it's the expert thing and the have you ever been to the region, like as I said on the show, these are just non-arguments. Like objectively speaking, you don't win points in a debate for saying this. Like if you were to take the most generous interpretation of his point there, and which and it's not just the obvious logical fallacy that it is, like an appeal to authority, but if you were to take the most generous interpretation would be like, okay, it's important to know what you're talking about. And you can gain insights into something by traveling there and seeing it firsthand. Now, I wouldn't disagree with either of those claims, but the point is that then you got to demonstrate that. Like, okay, if you have a level of expertise that I don't have, and you have insights because you've been there that I don't have, then okay, let's have the debate. And that should show, I said the other day, it was kind of like, it was almost like if you're like a fighter, like you're a UFC fighter or something, and so you agree to fight someone else. And you're like at Madison Square Garden, the fight, you get introduced, you're about to fight. And like I put up my hands, like, okay, let's fight. And then the other guy puts his hands down and goes, I'm such a better fighter than you. I'm just so much better at fighting.
You're not even really a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even count as a fighter.
It's your shtick fighting,
but it's like, so come show me, And then my shtick, it's just all these it became clear when I was there that Douglas Murray came to do anything but debate me.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I was like, oh, we're going to debate Ukraine and Israel. And then it was like, oh, that's the opposite. And, I did resent you know, because on the whole topic of like being an expert, I do think it's important, and I think it's lost on some of like the casual viewers, because people will think, they'll be like, yeah, Dave's an expert on this, and I'm not. And I was quite comfortable saying that there. Like, I'm a commentator, I'm a stand-up comedian, you know? But again, Douglas, as you could see in that clip, he doesn't really believe any of the things he's saying.
That's right.
Look, if you really had like commentators who aren't experts permeate the media, and not just like the new media, like the old legacy media. What do you think? Chris Matthews is an expert on Israel Palestine? You know, does Douglas Murray have a problem with Bill Maher having a show? Does he have a problem with Dave Rubin having a show? By the way, I'll put my expertise up against those guys any day. And so it's like, you don't really mean this. You don't really have an issue. He didn't have an issue with Coleman Hughes going on Rogan's show and talking about Israel. He's not an expert, and he got everything wrong when he was on there. His issue is that there's people who disagree with Israel coming on.
Yeah.
His issue isn't with the level of expertise of any of these people.
Well, and I think it's actually quite revealing, in my opinion. Two things I want to say. Number one, what I find so troubling about that line of argumentation is, I'm a U.S. taxpayer. We're all U.S. taxpayers. Our money is going to fund this, I would consider, genocidal onslaught in Gaza. I don't get to have an opinion because I haven't been to the crossings. Like, get out of here with that. Like, be for real about what you're actually suggesting here. And it's actually a very common tactic. You hear it from a lot of like people who describe themselves as like liberal Zionists. Well, it's complicated. You just don't understand. And it's a way to completely shut people down from engaging with this debate at all, because they feel like, oh, if I don't have a PhD in every in and out of this history, which you know much more about, and you have the mind to hold all those facts in your heads much more so than I do. But that you feel like if I don't know every single fact that has ever happened and what Bibi Netanyahu said in 1993 in this speech or whatever, then I don't get to have an opinion. Wrong. This is a democracy. I get to have an opinion about my money going to drop these bombs on children and women and aid workers and hospitals and mosques and level this whole place and set up a situation where now Trump is like, we're going to take it over. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's actually very revealing that in your language, he came here wanting to avoid a debate with you, because there is no debate at this point. There is no debate. Look at the way that, I mean, the public who is consuming this through a very biased media outlets with, you know, very slanted coverage, how much they have turned on Israel, how much their sympathies have changed. The only group that still like has a majority support of more sympathy for Israel or Palestine is like basically older Republicans. Every other demographic group has shifted. So I think, to me, the hollowness and the resorting to effectively rhetorical tricks to try to come out on top, to me, it's just emblematic of the fact that, like, if you're out there arguing like, oh, Israel isn't blocking aid at this point, I mean, that's a ridiculous, that's a ridiculous stance to try to claim. So instead you have to go to like, oh, well, you haven't even been to the crossings and personally inspected all the goods that are coming in. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, that was, I completely agree. And that was, one of the things that was infuriating about it, because he makes this accusation to me that I claim to be an expert, but then I have kind of like this like get out of jail free card where I'll go, oh, I'm just a comedian or whatever. And that's just, both of those are not true. Like, I never do either of those. I never claim to be an expert. And you guys, I mean, you guys have seen all my stuff, but you guys have seen enough of my content. Has there ever been a time once where like I made a point and then someone countered the point and I went, well, I'm just a comedian, so I don't do that.
I actually hosted a debate that you did for over 2 hours. You didn't do that once. I can literally attest to that personally.
And I smoked Dennis Prager in that debate. But
I couldn't say it at the time, but you definitely did. Yeah.
I mean, at least he came to debate, though. You know, like at least we actually debated the issues. So the thing that was so infuriating is like Douglas Murray is accusing me of using this this escape patch, you know, oh, I'm just a comedian. But then he was the only one who did that through every single point. Like every time it came to, oh, we're actually talking about the issue. If like the most pedantic, semantic, if I went, we've been at war for 20, there was one point where he literally goes, I said, we've been at war, you know, for the last 25 years. And he goes, you have not been at war. Wow. Yeah. And I went, I went, oh, because it's not a war here. I go, yeah, we're picking on third world countries. And then he said, well, in Afghanistan, you were there to take out Al-Qaeda. And I was like, yeah, maybe that sums up the war through the end of 2001. But after that, it was a 20-year regime change war against the Taliban. And then his next line is, that's because you got sucked into war. And it's like, wait, we just did this whole thing just to come back to you saying the same thing that you had. And I mean, it would be like, I'd say, okay, so when we were talking about Ukraine, at one point I go, well, look, Joe Biden's CIA director wrote the Net Means Net memo. He was the CIA director for all 4 years of Joe Biden's administration, and he's the one who told you that this is what caused the war. And then I said the head of NATO said the same thing, that he sent a draft treaty and then his response to that is, the war wasn't about Ukrainian entry to NATO. And you're like, just objectively speaking, look, maybe there's a counter to my point there, but he didn't offer it. He just asserted it was. And then when I make the point about, when we were talking about the war in Libya, he goes, well, that was a humanitarian intervention. They thought he was going to go genocidal. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, because didn't four-star General Wesley Clark claim that he had already seen the plans 10 years earlier when no one was claiming he was about to go genocidal? Now, maybe there's a counter to that. Maybe there's an answer to well, yes, he did say that, but those plans were scrapped, and then it really was a humanitarian. Maybe there's a counter. But he just goes, you can't say the name Wolfowitz, or people might hate Jews.
That was the dumbest thing.
What? What is it? So to accuse me of hiding behind being a comedian when you're unwilling to debate any of the topics. And by the way, for the record, which I probably should have said at the time, but I would argue that, if he's going to say that, me pointing out that Paul Wolfowitz had these war plans is going to lead to anti-Semitism, I would say that saying you're not allowed to say that is going to lead to a lot more anti-Semitism. To say that, you're not allowed to criticize Jewish people. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of the people who don't like Jews very much, but that's a huge part of their beef.
Yeah.
And, they kind of have a point on that front. I don't think they're correct to, hate Jews, but they got a good point on that. It shouldn't be. Nobody who has that type of power should ever be absolved from criticism. It's absurd.
You're exactly right. Yeah, his idea was, it was something, I've never even heard this level of argumentation, which was that Wolfowitz was some low-level bureaucrat. It's dude, read a fucking book. September 12th, 2001, he's at the table with George W. Bush, and he's the first guy to mention Iraq. This is a fact, but whatever. I don't even need to get more into that. It is important, though, for us to see where Douglas still has a lot of friends in power. Let's go and put this one up there on the screen. Donald Trump, literally the day after your debate, truthed out. Can we put that up there, please? Yeah. My friend Douglas Murray just released a new book, My Friend, on democracies and death cults. It's quickly becoming a bestseller based on his firsthand reporting. Quote reporting, yeah, we could call it that, documents the barbarity of Hamas's brutal attack on Israel on October 7th and Israel's heroic response. So, I mean, Dave, this is something you've delved on a little bit in the past, but and some of your past discussion just with the Trump administration and their current posture on Israel, and we'll get to the deportations in a little bit. But what was it like to see Trump, just put this book out like that with obviously, it's not his own behest, it's either the donor class or somebody around him, but
somebody
important
definitely
enough.
drafted that for him.
Yeah, somebody drafted it for him, but it was still enough, somebody powerful enough to put that out there, kind of as a counter signal to the moments after your debate.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have any more insight than what you guys have. I'd be speculating about what it is. It was amusing to me. I don't know. It's I feel, a lot of people were telling me, but for quite a while, I hear the Zionists on Twitter being like Douglas Murray is the guy you got to debate because he'll smoke you, and after the debate, I'm like, this is the best guy you guys got, who can't even argue the topic. Okay, but I did think it was, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of amusing. But look, it's the worst thing about Donald Trump. It's just the worst quality about him. It was true in his first 4 years, and it's true this term too. The absolute worst thing about him is that he is just terrible on the issue of Israel and Palestine. And then that, of course, undercuts everything else that could be good about the Trump administration. And that so you just can't be America first while being more loyal to a foreign country than to your own. And it's never been so blatant as it is right now. You know, coming off the last 25 years of terror wars on behalf of Israel, every last one of them being a disaster, every last one of them we were sold based off lies. Every one of them, you know, none one can even defend them at this point. I remember when my good friend, or you guys have had on the show, Scott Horton, debated Bill Krystal, and he goes, "When was the last war that?" Or someone in the crowd asked, "What was the last war you could justify?" And I can't remember. I think he started talking about the Balkans or something like that. Like even Bill Krystal can't pretend to justify one of these interventions over the last 25 years. And now, right now, we're flirting, we're killing people in the poorest country in the Middle East, in Yemen. We're flirting with a war with Iran. And it is so obvious that that neither of these countries are any threat to us. No one's even pretending. There isn't even like the Al-Qaeda argument. They don't even have like the Saddam Hussein was in on 9/11 and he's got nukes and he's going to pass them off to Al-Qaeda. No one's even presenting an argument that this could be a risk to the United States of America. It's just simply like, oh, well, people are upset about what Israel's doing, so we're going to go bomb them.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.